I'll let you sit here. Michelle has been on this project since it was. So, yeah. Pass around. Fine, actually, Chelsea, you don't need. I think you're on there, but.
Hey, how's it going?
All right, welcome everybody. I think we're trying to get there. Dawn is also online and trying to get their face up here as well. Maybe, hopefully.
Oh,
There,
Yay.
great. Hey, well, we are a small group here this evening. We're going to get going. I know there's a lot of energy behind the Create a Resilience Hub effort in Plainfield. We are doing a fully hybrid version, so welcome to those online. And if at any point technical issues or audio or anything like that, Nick is who just ran out. Nick is the Zoom in the room support. I am Laura. I'm the Climate Economy Director at the Vermont Council on Rural Development. I'll be facilitating the conversation today. And then we're also joined by a number of resource providers, what we're calling resource team, which are folks who are supporting resiliency efforts. Welcome, come on in. Supporting resiliency efforts in other communities across the state, other regions, and they are here listening in as well as going to be providing thoughts and ideas as well throughout the process. So I think, let's see, the overall introduction to VCRD. We are a neutral nonprofit that works statewide, and we were invited by the select board to work in Plainfield to host a series of conversations with the community member, taking the lead of what's important for the community, what can be done about it. Yep.
I'm only hearing you. I'm not hearing you out of that.
You're not at all.
And I'm wondering if the folks online are hearing.
I think, let's see, Don, you can hear us because I think there's some other mics also picking up online.
Yeah, I can hear you talking.
Okay.
And I just heard whoever asked that question as well. But
Okay.
not quite as loudly.
Did everyone else in the room hear Stephen's question? Okay.
So maybe you don't need it.
I'm going to turn this one off. If people are having trouble hearing, please raise your hand. Okay. All right, one less thing to hold, which is great. So VCRD, we're asked to work here in Plainfield. This is the third convening. The first one was big open doors, all ideas welcome. The forum topics were developed by a group of residents who identified what the community would want to talk about. All the ideas were welcomed into the room and then collated into themes. And there are about 24 themes that came out of what we heard both in person and through an online survey and through a youth forum that we did at Twinfield Union School. And those came back to the group in September. And we had about 60 folks in the room, 15 online, and there was discussion and prioritization around those 24 topics to what should happen now for Plainfield? Like, what is the most important thing to move forward right away? The group in the room voted down to 10 action ideas, and those 10 are going to be, getting a variation of a resource plan developed to connect them to existing resources as well as potential actions that could be taken. But then it was voted again to really get to the top two priorities. And that's where we are today, where we have create a resilience hub and create a housing strategy in the Haybarn Theater. So this group is create a resilience hub, and all of you together, today is the day to really jump into action planning and what can be done? What do you all want to do to progress this idea and this concept further in Plainfield? So we're going to start kind of big picture of what's happening tonight. So the goal is really to build that context, generate specific action ideas for this topic area of Creative Resilience Hub, identify what should happen first out of all those action ideas. And then we've got resource team providers here to reflect back and also provide additional ideas of, well, we tried it over here and actually would suggest maybe doing this first. And then also developing a list of technical resources, financial resources, or other things to pursue to move the ideas forward. So I think with that, I'll pause and see if there are any questions of what we're doing this evening. Does anyone need an agenda? Did everyone pick up an agenda when they came in? Love an agenda. Great. Thanks. Pass those out. All right. Keep your hand up if you need one. Hi, Pam. Before we dive in,
I'll go on you first.
okay. So Bronwyn, you can put the mic down. I think we're good with that one. Okay. And then we're going to pass around a sign-in sheet. So make sure that you are listed there. It's going to enable you to keep up to date with what's happening. All right. So let's go around the room really quickly and say your name. And then I would love to hear, I think the room would love to hear why you chose to be here today in this topic area. So, or if you were asked to be here by me to be a resource provider, you can provide that context too. We'll start on this front.
Hey everybody, my name is Chelsea Van Vliet. I was asked to be here for the Resilience Hub coordinating as the Resilience Hub coordinator for Marshfield. I'm also the farmers market manager there, and care about my community, want to be present.
Hi, I'm Michelle Lynn McCormick. I'm the director and lead organizer for Cooperation Vermont and the Cooperation Vermont Community Land Trust, general manager at the Marshfield Village Store, and part of the crew founding the Marshfield Resilience Hub and a bunch of other random stuff. But really interested in staying, together with what's happening in Plainfield around Resilience Hub organizing. So that we can, collaborate and coordinate and just be in closer, community and figure out how we can best support each other, provide like that mutual aid amongst Resilience Hub organizing, and then hoping we'll move Cabot into it, and we got West Danville, and then we're gonna be a whole clique of Resilience Hubs.
I'm Chris Gruen, I'm director of the Creative Campus here at Goddard, and I volunteered to be a part of the Resilience Hub as part of our intentional partnership with Plainfield. Prepared to do this.
Hey everyone, I'm Lena. I use they them pronouns. I'm a co-director at Community Resilience Organizations. We are a really tiny organization, but we provide technical support to climate justice organizing across the state. And we have been convening along with folks in Marshfield and folks in Plainfield and other people from around the floodplain a Community Resilience Hub toolkit. And it's really nice to be in a room of folks excited to talk about this real life manifestation of work that has mostly lived inside of a computer, drawing on experience from flood response and other disaster response and community work. So excited to share that with y'all and listen to what you're working on.
Hi, I'm Olivia. I'm a Plainfield resident. I am here because I feel that the Resilience Hub is like key to Plainfield moving forward and being a strong town with community that they can call upon each other, create beautiful things.
I'm Ray Carter. I'm the co-manager of the farmers market and have been project managing the Resilience Hub since last summer when the flood and mutual aid happened. And I do have, and I'll pass them out around if anyone hasn't seen it yet, the Plainfield Resilience Hub vision, and then also our operating map, which is neat.
Hi, I'm Mitch, Plainfield resident. Yeah, echoing what's been said, also just really big interest in how this community can come together, work with the resources that we have and the amazing talent that we have to take care of one another. Thanks.
I'm Stephen, and I'm here because I couldn't decide which group to go to, and my partner's got the other one covered, so I'm here in our household. Get a little bit of each.
Thanks.
I have my own household. I will be popping over to housing before too long. My name is Francis Rose. I'm on the select board of Plainfield. Um, I believe hard in this concept of resilience. We got so much resource and talent and skills and tools here in Plainfield. But right now I see them uncoordinated and not necessarily knowing how to talk to one another or get the needed things, tools, skills, people, etc., where they need to be going. And so I see this very much as a living system that could allow delivery of those resources in a timely fashion all over town to the next towns over if needed.
Don, will you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Dawn Fancher. I'm sorry I couldn't join you tonight. I'm glad for accessibility options. I have a chronic illness and I am not feeling great at all today, but I really wanted to be there. I wanted to come to this one because I've been one of the people that's been meeting talking about a resilience hub. And I just wanted to continue with that. I'm interested in that because I saw what the town did as a response to the flood in 24. And I think we didn't do a perfect job, but we did a really great job. And but I know that reaching out to people and binding a community together and supporting each other on an ongoing basis is different than in an emergency basis. And I know that people fall through the cracks, and I know that firsthand. And I'm interested in building structures that are long term and standing all the time to help us catch each other and support each other. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Don. Bronwyn.
Hi all, I'm Bronwyn Cook. I'm a community planning and policy manager in the Department of Housing and Community Development, which is an agency of commerce and community development, so state resource here. In my day-to-day work, in my division, we do a lot of work around land use planning. But my particular area of work is around climate. So we support communities in developing plans. That's one of the things that we do is provide grants and support to municipalities who want to do their town plans, their bylaw updates, things like that. And my work has been trying to figure out how to help communities integrate thinking around climate impacts and climate adaptation into their standard municipal planning processes.
Yeah.
Perfect. I'm Katie Proietti, and I'm a resident of Plainfield who cares deeply about the future of Plainfield in central Vermont and beyond and beyond and beyond. And in my short time here, I have met some really incredible people, some very smart and creative and passionate and resilient and beautiful people. And yeah, I feel like there's a lot of potential for this to really fly and to coordinate and connect with other communities across central Vermont.
Hi everyone, John Cleary. I live on Gray Road in Plainfield and particularly interested or involved in issues around farming and food through all this, so glad to be here.
My name is Kendra Padilla. I've been a resident of Plainfield for 2 years. We moved here from out of state, was hoping to be able to become part of a community and have loved the pieces of Plainfield that I've gotten to know so far. Very close to the library, we're there a lot. Flood recovery, work down in the village. I'm just really excited to continue that, get to meet even more people in the community.
Hi everybody, Dan Fingus, I'm the select board member here, living on Harvey Hill Road. I was also the volunteer coordinator for the flood recovery in 2024 and saw firsthand how much resilience we need. So that's why I'm in this group today.
Hi, all, I'm Sam Lashley-Hurst. I'm the Climate and Energy Planner at Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission. What is that, you ask? We're made up our board of the 23 towns, Washington County, plus 3 towns in Orange. And we support the towns with all of their planning, and then we also do some regional planning, and then we also often support the state trying to develop programs or implement programs and try to connect back to the ground and back and forth. So we're a big connector. No authority, but we're often in the room, so we really try to help. And resilience hubs has been a topic that I've been interested in for a while. And here is a resource. Laura and I actually pitched, exploring different resilience hub models across the country and how do we adapt those models for Vermont and for our Vermont communities. Had a lot of really fun conversations in different towns. For us, that might look like, gleaning and dehydrating and canning and storing food. For us, that might look like team spaces. For us, that may look like a whole variety of things, not all necessarily physical. Also sharing staff capacity, sharing projects, so that we can get some of the economy of scale that other folks in communities sometimes are able to take advantage of. So yeah, just really excited to be here, and thanks for having me.
Hi, I'm Pamela Wilson. I'm a member of the resource team here tonight. I wear several different hats. The one that will probably be the most relevant tonight is I'm one of the founders of Berry Up, which is the volunteer-based flood recovery organization that grew out of the coming together of several volunteers from many different walks of life and areas of expertise in the 2023 floods. So we've been doing this in Berry for 2 years now. And our peers resource. We had so much wonderful support and help from folks in 23 from Plainfield who came over to Berry with their shovels and their boots. And hopefully we're able to be a source of mutual support in 24. And as we all share this watershed together, looking forward to figuring out how we can be of service as you guys ramp up something that makes sense specifically for the challenges that are the most pressing and most important from your perspective in Plainfield right now.
Great, thanks.
I'm gonna hand over to Dan. Do you want to say just a few words, like big picture from the town and from your perspective?
So I mean, I think the biggest thing is the select board as a whole just wants to thank everybody for being here tonight. We are a town, I'm learning more and more as I get more involved with the town, that is really our only strength as a town is the people that are in it, the ideas that we have, and our willingness to put time into those ideas. And so this is an unbelievable process for figuring out what we need as a town. We as the select board are watching all of this. We want to try to help figure out how we can bring resources and bring connection and work all together so that we can bring these ideas to fruition. Our town by itself is going to struggle a lot if we don't also figure out with connections with other towns and other parts of the region. So just really appreciative that you're here tonight to share your ideas. We'd love to hear all the ideas, including ideas that may not always agree with each other, because I think from these dialogues is where we can find real change.
Great, thank you. So with that, on your agenda, we're going to run through the conversation today. We're going to start by reviewing the big issues with resilience hubs and the status and the effort to address it. And we provided and asked for some of that content in the September meeting. So I just want to recap that, and then we're going to add to it together as a group. So at the 9/17 meeting, the current context that was provided into the space was that there is already this group forming in town to build a network of resilience. There has been a survey on Front Porch Forum based on skills and interests for people to join that group. That group's been meeting with the Plainfield Area Community Trust, the Community Resilience Organization that Lena is part of, the library. Oh, maybe that was a separate bullet. Other organizations. Oh no, these are the three that you've been talking to about fiscal sponsorship. Been contacting the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission around grants and other opportunities. And there was also noted that there's a lot of other regional work happening in Vermont, but then also beyond around resiliency efforts themselves and resilience hubs, both physical and more network based. So that is some of the context. I want to just open it now to the room of what else is happening around. Oh wait, before we do that, let's read the description. Okay, it's on the agenda as well, but just to ground us and also know that this is not all inclusive, but it's at least what we heard from folks during the July process. So create a resilience hub. A group could develop community spaces that enable gathering and storage of shared items such as tool share, thrift store, laundromat, makerspace, food pantry hub, flood preparedness supplies, and more. In addition to physically storing items, this place could be a central community gathering spot for events, meetings, and social gatherings. This group could also expand its work beyond a physical building to include connecting volunteers, expanding well-being, and building town capacity. And I do want to note that a close third was increased accessibility. And so that, in talking with some of the other folks in town, was really how to weave it into all processes that are happening. It's not just accessibility of buildings, but also accessibility of events and accessibility of materials and community-led efforts too. So I do want to read that the blurb for increasing accessibility. So participants noted that accessibility in Plainfield goes beyond buildings, involves how people are included in events and meetings. And there was support for increasing and expanding all aspects of inclusion and accessibility in Plainfield. It was noted that the Plainfield Accessibility Committee is already working to improve the accessibility of town events and would welcome additional support for members and for advancing inclusion in all community initiatives. So the goal for this evening, we're going to ground again in some more, if there is additional current context, we're going to generate ideas for action of what this group could do to move things forward. And then we are going to prioritize those. What needs to happen first? So building upon the current context that we heard at the September meeting, what other additional information would be helpful to frame the day and the conversation?
Yeah, I think I would just add that in the description, in the agenda, that the Resilience Hub, and even in the conversations that were brought forth at the other meetings, is not about a one place. It's that there are multiple places in Plainfield, not just one place that would be like a one hub, that the hub here is more of a network because there are multiple locations that all have like different parts to play.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can see it as active relationships across the town. That's in my head, it's like, yeah, it would be like the town as a whole, through these different physical locations, and so participating in this like community building, resilience, leaning effort that is the hub itself. It's like just do that.
I'm not trying to get it in a few words. Active relationship building connection.
Sorry, folks who are watching the live stream are having a hard time with the volume. I noticed
Okay.
that people could speak up a little bit. There is a mic on the floor, but
Yeah, maybe if you use the PA mic, it'll actually help.
You think so? Okay,
For the folks.
folks in the room,
thanks for bearing with us though. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
It'd be good if you were up speaking.
everyone.
That's
I think Francis Rose is next.
No, he doesn't start.
Right. So we're gonna hand this one around.
Just an offering as an image, perhaps, kind of pointing what I heard already said is more of like a wheel and with like different spokes. So there's like something central and then there's all these little spokes that. Okay, bring the mic closer.
Oh, closer. Okay. Hey, wait.
We're thinking about wheels and
Okay.
spokes. As an image.
Okay.
Yeah, those are perhaps.
I'm thinking about this as a living system, as a body. It has a nervous system. The nervous system is all the people involved. That the messages, the synapses are the connections between the people. Meanwhile, we have like parts of the body, which are the places in Plainfield, the venues, the spaces. Meanwhile, we also have access to tools. We are a living system with a complex body, hopefully quick synapse connection time, and a lot of tools at our disposal. And so the journey and the work seems to be to me, to work on building that living system such that we're designing interventions. We are like making interventions. We are designing events. I mean, for the year of any year in Plainfield sees so many events happening. And so I see more events happening and I see more connections between the events, such that we are kind of adjusting on the fly. What are we building? What are we growing? What are we designing? What is needed? What kind of event yields what is needed? And that the nervous system then goes into action, utilizes the places, the hubs, the spaces connected to the nervous system, and then bringing to bear any tools that like help it all happen. And I see us designing beautiful events that
connect the town and inherently grow resilience.
Okay.
Go to my talk on
Hold it.
microphone use, which is, this is how not to use a microphone.
Yeah, hold it.
And this is how to use a microphone.
Thank you.
You guys are all way too abstract for me. I want to get something concrete.
Okay.
And to me, potential construct for a resilient system would be something that's analogous to what Habitat for Humanity does. I've participated in 2 or 3 volunteer groups that help build structures for other people. 2 different houses and a barn. And I can assure you that it's a lot of fun. It's a very satisfying activity. It feels very rewarding when it's finished. And what better thing could you do than help someone build their home? So in all the situations I've participated in, there was a GC on site who guided the process. And, you have to know a little something about how to handle materials and tools and so forth. But all of them were great experiences. And if we're thinking about building a village, I can't think of a better place to apply that idea.
Right.
My sort of initial thought about this is about since the resiliency hub can encompass a very wide range of activities, this whole Plainfield Forward process of trying to prioritize, how do we kind of keep some of that prioritization thinking about what we should do specifically next is my thought.
Okay, I think we're getting into sort of action ideas of like what should we do about it. We'll give a few more minutes to like what's missing or what's been positive around resilience within Plainfield. Like what are the concerns maybe too, or maybe some of the holes that just sets the context of what then we can develop and move into some of these thoughts and sort of next steps. All right, bring the mic. So we'll do Kendra and then Ray.
Go ahead. Just wanted to share for anyone who doesn't regularly go to Cutler Library that there are definitely some efforts made there to have things available beyond books. And I know the biggest challenge is that of space. And so just to add to that current context, that the library is definitely a place where that's being attempted in the very small space that exists.
Yeah, I think the current context, I think. Yeah, like network, and then also because there isn't one space that can hold all the things, and there are multiple efforts already happening, it's like. Where are things not duplicated, right? Like, oh, this is the library is going to be doing these things, and then and Creative Campus is holding these things. So having a way to kind of shape like where are these things being stored, or having that be something that's worked out as the group. I guess there's also 3. Another is as far as like what is worked on, like being able to prioritize where there's energy and capacity and have that kind of influence, like if there's a lot of energy in the food, like it's like that's where, right, like energy goes. And then I think another context is there's a communication piece. When I think about gaps, one of the big gaps in the town is beyond Front Porch Forum and Plainfield People Facebook group. There is there's a lot of root challenges that lie in struggles to have accessible communication that reach multiple people, especially also through mail. And I think that there is something with the Resilience Hub that it could be a platform for creating some coordinated communication in town. And so that's another piece that I don't think is like called out so much in the initial work.
Other context setting that's been
yeah, I had my hand up. I was going to say something very similar to what Ray said about communication, but I think she did even better than I was going to. But just and I started the Plainfield Facebook group a long time ago. And that Facebook's not a good place to be these days. We need new solutions. And I also I think what's missing is a way for not everyone can easily come to community events or can come to there need I think a need is for places for people to be able to plug in easily. People who sometimes come and go from being able to be more involved in the community. And so so there needs to be a way for people, new people and people who are needing to return to easily plug in. Um and community dinners are great if you can't make it on a Friday night. You know, we need more options, and we need more ways to pull in people who have trouble showing up in person but still want to be part of the community. Um, so creative solutions.
Great.
Like, yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Thanks.
Folks who are doing great, I really love that mic. But everybody.
Oh, you said Friday night dinners there. I was saying like they're great, but I'm saying we need more options
and
than
that, yeah.
that, just that. We need, and it's not that there's nothing wrong with Friday night dinners. If the one option was some like that you could just go to and show up with something else was like, you know, I don't know, Wednesday community tea at the library, we would still need a different option because we need multiples.
Yeah. But it also sounds like, thanks for bringing that into this,
Yeah.
the space, the current context is there is a community dinner that
Yeah.
people come together for and connect. All right. I'm feeling people really want to get into like, what can we do? What should we move forward? How do we start to create some of this vision of this image, right? Of this wheels and spoke, how to do it. So we're going to pivot to share ideas for action steps to do this work, unless there's any other context setting people want to, okay. Thinking about the challenges and some of the things that you noted there at the very end, Dawn, of like, this is what exists, but there could be something better. What are some actions that a group like this of energized individuals that are coming together to form something, what could you do to get there?
Sorry. I'm usually loud enough. Has anybody done a community resource map of like the people, places and things that are already existing and in play? Maybe not like connected to each other, but like what actually already exists?
You're asking the room that
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, that is one of
Plainfield.
things that is on the list of, yeah.
But hasn't happened
No.
yet. So is it in agreement with the room that that sort of assessment of what exists would be a great action step to take on? Existing.
I am going to echo what a wonderful first step. And also throw out that you have so many good resources that you're starting with already. And thinking about, so there's a couple of ways to think of. Berry Up was born in a post-disaster immediate space of necessity. So figuring out in the heat of the moment, oh my gosh, where can we find all the dehumidifiers we need to find? Who can we call? Or how can we find enough boots for people to have? All of those things, when you have the luxury to be able to figure this out in a non-emergency space, how wonderful, because then you can think really thoughtfully about the who, the where, and the how. And so I'm so excited for you all to be able to do this in a non-emergency setting. And the resources that you have are both the concrete things and the non-concrete things. And so that resource mapping is a great place to begin.
All right, from the community, other action ideas for, they don't have to be in order, they don't have to be the first thing you want to do. Maybe it's the 10th or the 100th thing that comes to mind, but we're going to get them all down And then we're going to talk about like, all right, which needs to happen first. But this is really a dump, like generating an action plan, big long laundry list that's going to feel overwhelming, but it'll start whittling down. All right, Bronwyn over here in the front and in the back.
Guess I'm gonna be a Johnny one note for the same theme, but a lot about what we're talking about seems to be kind of like within the boundaries of Plainfield or within the network of people we have here and so forth. You could certainly collaborate with folks outside of town, as we have with VCRD. And an extension of the thought that I expressed earlier about volunteers helping with building of housing. I believe there's a program that goes on at Resource in Barry that trains young folks in construction and trades and stuff like that. Maybe something could be set up for a couple of week quick course or a month-long thing, so volunteers could go and get trained on various techniques and uses of tools and so forth, so they'd be much more effective at the effort that I was describing earlier.
Hey y'all, I came in a little late, so I don't know what has already been said. But sort of going back to that first action point, we have a community resilience toolkit that we've been working on through CROW's Community Resilience Organizing for the past year. And it actually has a checklist, and there's going to be an interface added to that of like sort of how to do this community assessment around what is already here and what's needed. So I just want to make that really clear. We have a really amazing resource that exists that can support number one action.
That's awesome. So I added it to your current context. With that, knowing that, what would be like the next step or what's needed to do the assessment?
I mean, I think this is part of it, like sort of how we started is like organize with a group of interested people. And then sort of notice on that list of like what thing that you're sort of passionate about. So there's a little bit of like role assessment in there as well. And then inside of that group, you can actually start to like look through and be like, what's my skill set? What's my capacity? And like how, what needs to happen to actually start to engage.
Yeah. All right, so I have, the organized interested people, but then organize the skill sets and roles, these two.
I think I'm just expanding Chris's point there. This graphic for me makes a lot of sense.
Let me hold one up maybe
Sure.
for
Thank
online,
you.
because I don't have it digitally, but.
Because as I'm realizing, like some of the.
Who does? John has it? Okay, great.
I've seen it. I got it. Thank
No,
you.
I think it's
Thank you,
a
though.
copy that someone passed around, so.
Oh, there's that.
Okay. All right, sorry.
That's fine. Some of the things that are on the actions list, I'm realizing, okay, what we also need is to assemble a core set of people that are actually going to be engaged deeply on this and organizing this. And then a follow-up to that is like, we need funding for those people to actually give their work time to this. So I guess those two, it's like, who's the core set of people? Does that look like a wide call survey thing? Who's making that? And then it's like, who are some sources of funding that can kind of bolster this and support folks to really lean into it and make it actually happen? Not just for a month or 2 months, but like, let's do this thing for the long term.
I'll build off of what Olivia said. We followed some of the guidance in the Resilience Hub toolkit. And the survey, I think it's the second one there, survey on FPT. So that went out to anybody who was interested at the first Plainfield Forward event, at the Resilience Hub toolkit event that was the same week of the first Plainfield Forward event, and on Front Porch Forum and on Facebook group, and to people who have been having these conversations for the past year at the farmers market and community meal. So went to a pretty broad group of people, and the intention of that, I don't know if it was really a survey, but like a form, was to gather information about what skills people have to provide to this, what types of areas of interest that they might be interested in. So it took the ideas that are on the vision, so we could get an idea of like, oh, there's lots of people interested in the food and farm things. That's a pretty clear indication that that's like a step to move into, but there's like not a lot of people who actually are interested in like this thing. So maybe that's not where we prioritize energy. And then that form also asked capacity challenges. So like, are people interested in doing a certain thing, but yet they only can come to a meeting every other month? Like we wanted to try to match like where do people have capacity, and then also identifying where there's skill gaps. So what types of skills would people be willing to learn? Because there's also a series of skills that are needed to operationalize and project manage, building, this kind of structure. So that's where the folks that have been a part of these conversations in this room thus far, because not everybody has, but many people in here have been, have filled that out and have provided that context. And so we're at that place, like just the background for what Olivia shared is like, okay, here's this proposed structure, and then how do we move that forward and how do we operationalize that? And I think one of the next steps for me from an operational perspective is who, and then really having some concrete time together to work this out. So not a meeting, but like a day together, and like that's a paid, stipend option for as we find funding, so that we can do that and kind of make the plans for how do we do that asset mapping. And I think most of the communities, or not communities, most of the spaces and groups in town have at least been contacted about this, and not everybody is able to step in right now, but there's conversations moving with all of that. So there's also those conversations, right? So that like the Twin Valley Senior Center and the Emergency Management Committee, like those groups are also like tapped in. So there is how do we continue to build build that network, I guess.
Yeah, and I want to pause right there because I think that brings up a really interesting point. So oftentimes in a VCRD process, priorities are chosen and then a task force is made to move those priorities forward. In Plainfield, there is so much happening already, and really the effort behind Plainfield Forward was to bolster energy and capacity and align whatever the priorities are that were set by the community to those existing efforts. And so there has been this network development kind of happening. And so the opportunity here is that any additional interest kind of gets funneled into that effort that's underway. People are also welcome to identify other forms of structuring as a group, or create other thoughts that come up from that. But it does feel like fitting for that group to be able to take on expand to all the other action ideas that may come out of this group today and moving forward, to really become a unified effort for the area, for Plainfield. Anything to add to that, to any folks that are participating currently in those conversations? Okay. All right. So there's been a lot said right around this like organizing piece, and we want to break it down into like each little action aspect to it. So I wanted to go back to the survey that's gone around to a number of different sources. Is there an action in there? Does that need to go to more people or be expanded in some way, or does it feel like it's gathered? Is there another opportunity needed to see if there's additional skill sets out there, additional people interested? Just kind of wondering if there's that openness needed, and maybe not, maybe. Okay, I'm couch that one too, but if someone feels like that's an ongoing action step. Yeah.
I think the gauging of the next round of engagement is this outer circle of community members and area of interest volunteers. I think that we have reached the people who want to be more heavily involved, and that they are here, or they have been here, or they're not able to be here right now. But I think that not that survey in particular, but something a little bit more simplified, so that we start to gain folks who are not interested in being a part of shaping this. I think we've gotten a pretty clear understanding of who those people are. But there's a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, I want to be in the loop, or like, keep me informed. And we don't have a way to capture those people thus far. I mean, we can create that, but I think that that's part of this. And then once we do, how do we start actually communicating them, and when, and what? But I think there's a lot of people who are interested in wanting to know what we're going to do and how they can tap in when the time is there, and capturing that is going to be a next step. That's my perspective.
So I've heard two very different things there. One, gather interested volunteers, somehow pull that in, but then also the communication out to that outer blue ring, like way of doing that communication process almost. All right. Other ideas? Big things, little things. What's missing to move the effort forward? Yeah, over here.
The first action, existing assessment of what exists and resources, that feels like it could be broken down. Like, what do we mean by resources? Getting really granular with what we are assessing.
Right. No, go for it, Sam, please.
I was actually gonna recommend the same thing, but instead of just what resources, also, I think that can happen at a few different scales. So I think that could happen in terms of the sort of core folks, and then the sort of the next ring, and then the next ring. And then I think there's also formal community asset mapping, which is like a different thing that could be an initiative of the Resilience Hub. In terms of looking at the broader community once things are sort of up and running. So I think that's something that can be done iteratively, first sort of internally, and then at sort of a larger scale, maybe a little bit more formally, and connected to some other processes. That's just a suggestion. I often think about res hubs as sort of holding the space, right, for different initiatives and different projects and different priorities and needs to come to the surface. So I would suggest that you could also do the same thing with needs. So like, but you're kind of doing that here in this process, but I'm talking about that much more granular thing that actions come at. So housing, like the physical structure at this place needs to be built by this time, like that kind of basic thing. The library needs some lead abatement so they can have food, right? So like actually getting an idea of maybe the folks in the two first circles about their current projects might help you bring folks together with action. And then from there, you can rotate out. So looking at those projects might help with then looking at a community of scale of who can offer this kind of service, this kind of time, this kind of funding. If there are enough projects, do they all need a heat pump, or do they all need a grant writer, or do they all need a project manager, or do they all need a facilitator, and sort of leverage some of those existing projects with the existing folks to help get started. And that is definitely more focused on the physical, so that might not be of the top priority, but it is a potential place to start.
And so I want to bet with the room, right? There were a few ideas there. One was identifying what resources and assets exist, but at these different scales. So I just want to see if that feels like an action step, like broken out, and looking at those different layers is something this group wants to include in the list. Is there anyone that wouldn't want to include that in? Everyone's okay with it being part? Do we want this really to come from you all?
I need help. Thanks.
I think I need help again on understanding what it actually is saying.
This
Like,
one.
I understand identify what resources to assess, because I understand that there are a multitude of different types of resources, whether that be like creative, human, non-physical, physical, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
And then it's like, okay, what's an example again of what that looks like at different scales? I just want to understand it before I actually say yes or no, or.
Yeah. An example?
So, and we started with the most obvious, I guess, lower hanging fruit of like, okay, we have community supper, we have the onion room food shelf, we've got the store, we've got Cooperation Run, we have the library. Like the entities, the recreation committee, all the different people who are already organizing things within the community. Those were part of like the initial mapping, like who's already doing stuff, right? But is the food shelf talking to the community garden? The answer was no. Right? Definitely now. And so starting there, and so different scale is then we launched into a survey that went out to the whole community around like, what kinds of resources would you be willing to offer? What kind of help would you might need in the case of an emergency? And what kind of resources might you have to offer? Where are my tractors with forklifts? Where's, people who have diesel chainsaws? Right? Those kinds of things. Like, what do you have that you could lend to an effort? Like, people aren't going to come to meetings, but they will bring their tractor, that kind of thing.
And I think maybe building on what Sam was saying was when we were talking about gathering these interests of volunteers, that was sort of this blue ring of kind of that periphery. And so those may have different resources than the core skill set that's being identified through the survey, and then even the operating team's resources or connections. Okay.
I was gonna be redundant. You said what I was gonna say, but I guess I do wanna just honor Barry up too, because I think that's like where I noticed this working really well, and some of the volunteer coordination of like, when people were coming with a need, we were also asking them like, what do you have? And this to me actually is a tenet of mutual aid, of just like, we all have needs and we all have something to offer, but that real personal scale of like, how do we fit into this whole really matters.
And I can add what might seem like a really basic little thing in there, which is getting a sense of what your shared values are around scales of urgency. Because what looked like magic sometimes at the Berry Up table happened because we did take some time to say around scales of urgency, what are the things that we feel that as a group of people we're going to mobilize really quickly around, like, and if it's something like we need to get water from this place to that place where they don't have water, or we need to get diapers and baby formula to this house because they don't have it, we felt like, because we were able to say in moments where we have the luxury to work slowly and thoughtfully and intentionally and consider all options on the table and best use of resources, when we have that luxury, we're going to think this way. But when we're in a space of urgency, we are in agreement that sometimes we're going to move fast. So sometimes we're in agreement around when it's urgent and when we move quickly, and we're in agreement around when we're not in a space of urgency and when we can be a little bit more slow and thoughtful. And so that is another way of thinking about scale, is what is a disaster to you? What are the times that you feel like now is when we jump into a different method of working together? And when we're in that method of needing to work quickly, what changes? And that means that sometimes your community organizing techniques look like one thing, and sometimes they look like something else. But you're willing to do that pivot because you are clear in your value around in this moment, like preservation of life is most important, versus maybe in this moment, like we're gonna hold something else. We don't have to be making decisions with certain kinds of urgency. We have a little bit more spaciousness. And so our organizing looks like this in this moment. And luckily, people normally, and Vermonters want to, like, before they take help, they want to give help. It's one of the wonderful things about being in these communities, is that there's sort of a natural tendency towards mutual aid models that we see within our communities. And so that is one of the resources that we have to work with. And yeah, so that's just another way of thinking about scale, is scale of urgency versus scale of how
open and flexible versus directive our tactics might be, and the relationship when we pivot between those things.
I'm wondering, this might be a little blind of a question. I wonder if, I don't want to create a lack of accessibility in the suggestion, but I wonder if an online resource like a website for collecting comments, questions, interests exists, anything like that already exists, or if it wouldn't be a good thing to have that. I'm thinking kind of from the perspective of where I'm sitting here on campus and the different groups I've been a part of up here, and how at the radio station, for example, it was a place that we needed to gather information from the community all the time. So we were thinking, how do we do that in a comprehensive way where people can reach us for a number of different interests? Cut me off at any point if this is not making sense. Also, just thinking about some of the different ways in which we create communication platforms for emergencies on campus with our lessees, for example. Certain groups are involved in a certain platform for texts, and others aren't. And it's triggered by certain levels of urgency or need or crisis. I wonder if we wouldn't somehow identify those groups in town that would be on a communication chain like that.
I've been really enjoying listening this conversation play out because about 12 or 15 of us have been working really hard to take all of the things that you need when the disaster is happening and get information about them in one place. And so there's a section in the Resilience Hub Toolkit about communication and about emergency systems. There's a whole section about how to determine what the dynamics are in your community. I really appreciated what you were saying, Pam, about getting on the same page about where urgency is and how to act together. There is a lot in this document that speaks to some of the mechanics of the processes that are coming up that folks are identifying, wanting to work on. And to your question, there's also, we're developing an online interface component of this that has all of the all the information in the toolkit and also functions as a project management tool. So y'all can say, we as the Plainfield Resilience Hub have really moved through all of these checklists about setting up our emergency food system, and we see that there's one extra piece that we haven't gotten to, or there are all of these things that we have practiced here and we want to download them in one place so that we can have them offline and store them at the library. So there's a function that's currently in development and also functions offline should power and et cetera go down. That will meet some of those needs.
So it's great context, and I'm curious, like, what this group feels like, what the action could be around, like, okay, there's this tool, there's this online interface coming, and maybe you're already there, right? I haven't been a part of a lot of the conversations. Is it a tech or a comment? A comment? Hold on 1 second, Don, and I'll come to you for your next comment, okay? I'm curious just to like dig into that. Of like, is there an action behind the resilience toolkit that exists? It sounds like it may touch on a lot of potentially of these ideas. Has it been used already within the community? Does it feel like there is a specific piece to move forward? Yeah. Oh, thanks.
I want to look inside the packet to identify really what I'm trying to say right now, but it sounds to me like there is an online platform of some type to create for us that will be an information gathering tool. Thank you. It's big. I don't want to waste anyone's time. And there's some sort of action here, or I mentioned the radio station. And we all know, like, any town that has a really solid community radio station has an unbelievably important emergency, a resiliency tool. The radio station should have a very capable generator. I don't know that it does yet, but it will soon if it doesn't, and will work in the instance that we lose power. So it can serve as a life-saving communication tool. So this is kind of a tangent, but we should reach out to WGDR and see if they want to sit maybe with us in this group or someone from there.
Yeah, let's. Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, so what do you, as far as like action items go, I've never been involved in resource mapping, so maybe this is something that's already part of resource mapping. And I'm being redundant by saying it, but when I'm trying to problem solve around things around my own life or other things I've been involved in, I like to look at where there's blockages or dead ends that could be removed so that things can flow, so there can be connections, so that so it seems like one important thing to identify is when you're identifying resources is to identify like deficits, either like low-hanging fruit is good, but also more complicated things that stop something from being useful, that stop connections from being made. I tend to think about communications and accessibility and stuff. So like a big example of something that would be a little harder would be like physical accessibility of spaces. You know, this place would be useful for this, but it doesn't have an elevator. Or maybe this place would be useful for this, but the elevator needs to be fixed. Or I don't know the story about this, but I've noticed they have built a beautiful new ramp up the church in town, but there's 2 steps to get from the porch to inside. That ramp hasn't been built yet there, you know. So like those are some like physical accessibility examples of the kinds of things I'm talking about that would so yeah, like I think identifying choke points that can be worked on instead of, which is slightly different than entire new projects, but things that can help the things we already have become more useful.
Great, thanks, Don. Pam?
So I had an opportunity to sit with a document that with the Community Resilience Hub Toolkit, and if you need one suggestion I would make, what I love about this document is how it can be applied to any municipality or region. And in terms of how to begin to make it concrete for your municipality is the often in times that are not really unusual emergency times, there is someone who either within your municipality or your emergency services structure or your education structure, like within your school system, or there's somebody who is the person who under regular circumstances would be responsible or be the knowledge holder around a lot of this stuff. And so starting with, for Plainfield, who's the person who would under normal circumstances be responsible for this? What's their phone number? What's their email address? What that like linking it to, oh, what is this for us here in this town? And so that kind of data, that kind of fact-finding mission is one way to go from this being a wonderful document that could be applied to many places to your document that exists for many conditions, but maybe not the most world upside down conditions.
Does that resonate with folks in the room to like have a place where the contact information, the names of people that are in charge of different things? It's somewhat of emergency management plan, but expanded probably beyond to the food systems and to other places around. Does that exist? Do people even know it exists? Maybe it's finding out if there is that information all in one place.
The town emergency plan itself, like it comes from the town, has a lot of that, but then it doesn't capture the rest of, but it's a starting point.
Like one of those action ideas would be reviewing the town emergency plan. I'm seeing yeses.
Could I just say there's a local emergency management plan, so that's your one that you do every year. And there are now several different types of like appendices. So there's like a heating, like for preparing for extreme heat, which has involved new stakeholders. So there's all those sort of options. Just in terms of places to review of plans that definitely already have. There's your local hazard mitigation plan. That's a much longer plan that talks about all the different hazards and then has a big stakeholder list. That stakeholder list may be in the plan or maybe in the working group that gets together every 4 years to
4 to 5 years. Hopefully it's 3 years, but usually it's 5 years when it's due. And then also your actual town plan also is gonna list a lot of those key folks, but maybe sometimes in a really formal setting or stopping at a certain point that is sort of unsatisfactory, or there just needs to be connections with more community embedded folks, people who are serving other types of folks as well. And maybe that list is just a little too narrow, maybe a lot too narrow, but I think it's just a worthwhile to just note those 3 different plans. You also probably have a lot of other plans, but as good places, really good places to start.
We just make sure have the mic there.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe what I'm about to say has already been said. Said since someone handed me the microphone. But anyway, I see a document that Chris was looking at a minute ago. I believe Laney brought it in. I see this little chart floating around, and I think there's some other documents and resources. And so kind of along the same lines as having a list of individuals and contacts and so forth. Seems like he may be on the Plainfield Town website or on the Plainfield Forward website or something. There should be a resource page where all of these plans and documents and things are available for reading or download or both. And then folks could go there and study up on this stuff at their leisure rather than thumbing through this and asking where they can get it.
I heard 2 pieces in that, right? It's develop this resource page, so kind of gather the resources. And then you said, well, maybe it's the town page, maybe it's the Plainfield Forward page. So then that would be the second step of that would be, or a step of that would be identify a place or create a space for that online. So this is more gather those resources and then develop a place or add to an existing place. Okay. Michelle.
So my comments, thoughts, question, is more of a baseline definition that needs to be shared that currently isn't usually around what a resilience hub is or could be and what resilience even means. Right. And there's, a federal definition of what a resilience hub is, right? And it's, I would say, quite narrow from my perspective. But understanding what the group of people organizing it are really trying to get at. And in Marshfield, we're operating under a much broader definition that isn't just emergency response and preparedness. That is absolutely a component of it, but we're really acknowledging that increasingly many of our folks are facing everyday disasters, right, on a household level, and things are looking pretty harsh day by day and aren't going to be looking up. So what does it mean for us to be everyday resilient, and what are the kinds of supports and connections and mutual aid amongst ourselves that we need to be putting into place to deal with the everyday heightening crisis?
So that was around vision, right? Or the call. And I think there is a document generated, and is it a reviewing that document with everybody? There's also, right? So there's the Resilience Hub effort that's in town. There's the blurb from what we heard at VCRD. So, and combining those or omitting those, or just sort of creating this definition for Plainfield of what the Resilience Hub is. Does it feel, what is the process, or where in that process does it feel like Plainfield is for reviewing that, developing that, and moving forward?
We have
the vision has pretty clear definition based on the information that was in the toolkit of what a resilience hub is, how it applies to Plainfield, and gives kind of that baseline information that I think everybody who in this room has been a part of, except John. I think you were a part of the initial conversation. So John, Well, that's the document that you have there. Yeah, so I mean, I think that we've done, we've done that piece, and I think from a, a next steps perspective, again, it's where we're getting together, and it comes back to the funding. It comes back to like daily resilience. It's like, to do this, we need the time and capacity to do this. There's been a huge amount of labor that has been put in over the past year for this work. And I think, I'm speaking for myself, and I think I think this is what we've been talking about, is we're ready to move forward with the work that we've been what we've put in forth. Like, we've put the labor in and we're ready to move forward. And I think the next steps with that are, figuring out our funding mechanisms and getting together and really having a full day together, so that we can do, I love this values, the urgency piece, that's a definite conversation. Work through the toolkit with what pieces are we prioritizing, and working with the templates that have been provided, so that we can be like fitting those in with, or fitting Plainfield into them. And then how do they adapt? Because I know that's a part of the purpose of the toolkit, is as people work with it, then it helps inform how the toolkit continues to be a living and growing document. I think we start our asset mapping process. We've done the asset mapping around needs. So that's pretty clearly defined in the vision document. And I think there is some additional work that comes from that, as far as the different the areas in the vision document for folks who are looking at it. What are they called? Help, Mitch. Oh, right, it does the backwards. That's collaborators. Shared vision for community resilience hub, possibilities and outcomes. That's our needs mapping. That can get more detailed, but that's getting more detailed when we actually have capacity, to do that, and resources to do that. And we have our network in place of the collaborating partners, so that we're moving that forward. And as far as resource mapping, that is the thing that is something that we're needing to move forward with. And I think that that's another part of like a day together, that we can map out what that process looks like. And then we can determine what type of support we might need with that, if it doesn't come from our existing group. Hazard mitigation plan, like we have contacts with the town, and that's going to be a process of continuing to build relationship and rapport, and developing those processes as the Resilience Hub gets kind of up and running and operationally structured, so that it has that validity to some groups that might not have the capacity to tap in now. They need to have something that's easy to tap into. And the town plan. So I think that like there's a full day of kind of working through that, the folks that are ready to work through that, and working on how do we get the funding for that. Like, that's very much where I see next steps. And I have another more minuscule thing that I'll share later, because I just talked a bunch.
All right, maybe a couple more minutes on sort of action ideas, and then we're going to talk through, similarly to like Ray's championing there, of like, this is what we need to do next, and that is the next conversation. So if there are other ideas for things to do, let's get them all out.
I would love to get Plainfield, and I don't know what this would look like, but I'd love to get Plainfield more involved or in conversation with Vermont Farm to Plate with the BT Food Security Roadmap 2035. Because that's really interesting. And I think that there are steps that could be taken on the town level that the Resilience Hub could support or help facilitate, coming in, like putting a spotlight on. I also think that could be part of how we shape like the community dinners or conversations with farmers in the area. There's just like a lot there that I kind of want to put up on there, because I think it'd be great.
You mentioned a plan or what was, you said conversation.
It's the VT Farm to Plate, VT Food Security Roadmap 2035, which is a whole document that they have published, put together with a lot of thought and intention.
2025?
35.
35.
Yep.
Okay, sorry. We'll find the actual resource. But so this is a document that exists.
Yeah.
So it'd be like reviewing that or developing it further.
Yeah, I think it'd be like, how do we implement it? And could the Resilience Hub be a place that's holding that and kind of drawing in some of the community members of like, okay, this is what all of this research and this organizing that's found in this document is saying is useful, helpful. for food security in small rural areas across the state. How can we actually hold that here in Plainfield? What does it look like?
Okay. Great.
Since we're on the topic of big long-term plans, feels like this is a good time to also suggest the state just finished doing a resilience implementation strategy. And it's statewide, it's very high level, but it's essentially all the state agencies getting together to talk about what are the highest needs and the most actionable items specifically around climate resilience. But that would be a great place to look. There's a whole section in there around food and agricultural systems, but then it also touches on a whole host of other resilience topics. It might just be a good thing to look through because, those are areas that state agencies are going to be focused on. So looking for the places where your resilience hub interests align with what the state has put out there as top resilience priorities. So it'll cover some of that food stuff, but it was also going to look at economic and environmental sustainability. There's some things in there around community planning. So just might be helpful to look through those actions and see, what might align, or it might give you some ideas of other things that, you didn't think about yet in terms of like, oh yeah, our resilience hub could maybe fill that gap or do some of that.
Just a follow-up question. Are there resources, financial resources tied to that if there are aligning values action items from the state for resilience hubs that are doing those things?
Not resources specifically for resilience hubs. I would say the other state plan where resilience hubs show up is in the state hazard mitigation plan. I really appreciate the conversation about like, how are we defining a resilience hub? Because I think everybody has a very different idea of what it is. So I would look to the state hazard mitigation plan for what VEM defines as a resilience hub. And that's not to say that that's the only definition or that's the only way to do a resilience hub. In the resilience implementation strategy, there are one of the key components of that was to cost out like what would doing these actions cost. There's no dedicated, some of the actions are things that are already being done through existing funding. So it's worth looking at those and just knowing like, okay, these already have some funding, these are already happening. It might be helpful to tie into those. And there are some actions where resources are needed and it's been sort of costed out, but where and how those resources come together is TBD. But again, just worth knowing that those are places that other state agencies have some interest and, certainly the kind of thing where, you can call up your legislator and say, we think this is a great idea and it's been put out there. So.
Great, thanks. Yeah, right.
Know if someone not be raising hand. This is getting into the minuscule but action items, and I don't think it's been mentioned yet. Is the community meal and farmers market are already acting, like I think of like Chelsea and just the work that's happening at the Marshfield Resilience Hub. The Plainfield Resilience Hub, kind of like the first ideas that were coming were in the minuscule. It was, okay, there's a farmer's market, there's a community meal, they've merged together. They're not operationally sustainable in any way, shape, or form, yet they're super needed for the community. And how do we find fiscal sponsor for them? Like how do they're active, like happening things, like low-hanging fruit, right? So how do we find the sustainability for those? Merge them more together. Now the community meal is being offered weekly. So it's like, that's one of the first kind of like action beyond like developing the operations and making that functional. The community meal and the farmer's market, and then also connection with the granary, which is the community center. Like those are three happening things that are not sustainable, that need support. And there's a kind of a weaving together there that I just want to put out there.
Yeah, minuscule action ideas are great too, because you don't want to lose track of those when you're thinking big. You got to also be like, okay, these are the little pieces. Yeah, yeah.
Another source of curiosity or research or investigation for your community can be what major calamities or resource deficits have we generationally figured out ways to overcome? So what did we used to do before we had a domestic violence shelter? What did we used to do before we had any beds for folks who were unhoused? What did we used to do before we had a food bank? And kind of remembering that there are legacies of what kind of formal and informal social structures have always existed across the long arc of people living in this place, and what did they pull upon for strategies and organizations. And so we want to look at the systems that we have, but also how did people take care of each other before these systems were here? And sometimes that is a wonderful way to talk with with community elders to find out how systems that exist now came to be. And other times it's ways of kind of tapping into the brilliance of the original community organizing and systems of mutual aid and support that kept people okay in the absence of those structures.
Got a hand or thinking?
I'm actually thinking really hard. Well, I think and it hasn't already been said, but does it bear repeating? And maybe I'm moving into the champion. But I think this piece that Dawn brought up about like blockages and accessibility, I've just been thinking about like who's missing. So, and I think you too, Pam, just naming this piece of like what existed before, but I'm just like looking in this room and I'm like, who's missing from this conversation and continues to be. And so I'm just like really interested as we're talking about moving forward into this like day-long retreat of like, how do we actually get the people at the table who are wisdom holders, who have deep needs that pretty consistently become invisibilized or have lots of access barriers. Like it might be like, don't speak English as the first language, but I want to start tracking that a little bit more of who's not here, but we want to be here.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, the Twin Valley Senior Center is now aware and are ready to have conversations. So that's a good piece. And then from what you were saying, Pam, Christy Farnham's the new president of the Plainfield Historical Society. And so there's also conversations there and like, oh, like what kind of thing could happen where we're doing some learning with the elders and like weaving that in. And I think another just action piece I want to make sure is tapped because it's something that Monica brought up at the first one was in thinking of this outer circle and connecting with volunteers. There's the connecting through online, but then also part of why we're thinking communication kind of hub in a way for this is also needing to connect through the network organizations that reach people who don't use these types of communication tools. And then also in how we bring in other volunteers, and that's where that volunteer fair idea that Monica had come up with is definitely like a part of, as we do figure out outreach with this blue circle, like it's not just a survey, right? It's also how do we kind of find volunteers in other ways, and want to make sure that we have that idea in there.
Okay, yeah, online to Don.
Hi, yeah, so this is maybe a bit more minutia than I would normally bring up, but it connects to a lot of different things that people are saying, and that I've had one very specific idea that I've been kicking around and haven't brought up because I haven't felt like I could step forward to do much on it right now, but I just want to say it right now, which is this connects to like what were our older systems for supporting each other? How do we directly support people in a different way now? How do we include more people? And how do we outreach to the kind of people who aren't normally at the table or literally in that room? And one idea I've had is like is a thing in my head I think of as like bring a plate to folks. So for example, myself, I can't make it in person today because I'm having a bad day with my chronic illness. You know what'd be really great right now? Food. And you know what else I'm not getting because I'm not there? The free food you all had access to. And also thinking about like, you know, the community dinners, like who can't make it? Who isn't it safe for them to eat inside with other people, or who can't physically make it because they're disabled or elders or are caring for little kids or caring for sick people. And so I was thinking it'd be great if we could have a group that would gather food at things like community meal, things like this, things that people have to join on Zoom and can't make it in person, and just drive it around to folks who need it so that they could be part of the community, that get that little bit of chatting when they dropped it off. We'd know who they are, it'd be a way for them to plug in, it'd be a way for us to reach out to them and ask them for their information and their input and how they could help. I just think there's and it's like actual material support that people could use. So I don't know. That's just an example of an idea I've been kicking around, and I would like to work on it, but I would definitely need help right now. So
And Don, to build on that, you're identifying, right, like the barriers again, right? Like the blockage. And is there an assessment or an understanding of what all those are that exist to keep people from coming to the community meal or participating or?
Well, I mean, I think like for people coming to the community meal, there are things that can be done to make community meals more accessible to people. Having it outside when the weather is good, making sure that the space is physically accessible as far as like, elevators or ramps or whatever. There's being mindful of allergies and stuff like that. But there will always be, and there have always been people in our community who cannot get out, no matter how accessible we make spaces, no matter how much childcare we provide and all those things. And sometimes some of those things they're only going to exist for 2 weeks. They had surgery, they've got COVID, whatever. And so I think that I think that's just a good way to build connections. So the idea I'm thinking of here is this would be breaking down a lot of those barriers because it'd be doing multiple things at the same time. It would be helping people out, and it would also be a structure that isn't a physical location, but a structure people could that would create connections, right? People bring you food, you get food from people. Um, it draws people together. It's the exact same reasons we want to have community meals in person, but this would be bringing it further out. And then it would also give us a group of volunteers who are willing to drive around and drive things to people. So that's a network that could also be used if other needs arise that people have. So because you'd have those existing volunteers of people who like to drive out into the hills and spend 10 minutes on someone's doorstep passing something off to them, right? And you'd have the connections of people who want to receive those meals that could be utilized in emergencies, perhaps also.
Yep. Great. Thanks, Don. Do here and then Kendra. Do you have the mic? You have the mic. Oh, okay. Oh,
I wanted to respond to what Pam said earlier about what did we do before we had shelters for people who were suffering domestic abuse? What did we do before we had services to help the unhoused and that sort of thing? And I don't know for sure what the situation was, but my sense is the need for these was less. And I don't know if it's because there was a lower percentage of the population that need these services, or if it was just simply that our awareness of this need was less. I can't answer that. But I was going to say that what we used to do is we didn't need these things. And so one of the things that's starting to happen in school systems now is they're saying they have a no phone policy. And so maybe it's not only about what we can do to address some of the concerns we have, maybe it's about some of the things we can undo to address some of the concerns that we have.
I just wanted to put out there, Don, related to your idea, this might be a potential place to partner with the Twin Valley Senior Center, because I know they have a current program. I assume it's mostly geared towards seniors, but I don't know for sure. I used to do driving to the food bank to get some of the food that they would then use in their distribution. So that just could be potentially tapping into something that already exists and just expanding it.
So that is almost exactly what I was going to say, but in terms of the resource mapping and gap
and needs mapping, overlaying in terms of the existing Meals on Wheels provider, the existing Green Mountain Transit Community Driver Program, both of which are in desperate need for additional volunteers, and both of which are funded by specific federal and state grants and so forth. But the gaps there for things like, bringing meals to people for, for events like this, could we build off of those existing networks? Could we strengthen those existing networks rather than start from ground zero? So I think that goes back to the mapping part of this to identify what do we have versus what can be bolstered.
Great, and I think that's a perfect pivot. So these action lists are going to continue to be generated, right? But I think for the next bit of time here, we're going to look at these actions and say like, all right, what should happen first, and how to organize as a group as to moving things forward. So we're going to have Orca kind of zone in on these sheets, Dawn, but I'll read through them all together too, and then we'll have a conversation of what people think is kind of the highest priority to move forward. It doesn't mean things are set in stone, but it gives a direction, and it also provides the resource folks in the room to lean into suggestions and resources that could align with those priorities. All right, so potential actions. Existing assessment of what exists and resources. Excuse my shorthand here. Collaborate beyond Plainfield. For example, resource the volunteer training for tool use as an example. 3, organize interested people, organize skill sets and roles, assemble core set of people to organize, gather funds to support those people making it happen, gather interested volunteers, sort of the blue part of the diagram ring, communication to that outer blue circle, process and tools to do that. Identify what resources to assess. Identify what those resources are at different scales. For example, what do you have to offer? Formal asset mapping when things are further along. Identify shared values of urgent need versus spaciousness. An online place to gather info from the community, a tool to do that. And then we've got communication chain around town. Radio station to get a generator to power that communication. Identify deficits or choke points or complicated things that keep things from happening. Review local emergency management plan, local hazard mitigation plan, town plans for key folks and connections needed. Gather a resource page where relevant docs are all available. Develop and add to a place online where those documents exist. A day together to move items forward, develop values, the toolkit, funding. The food plates and distributed network connect people and needs. Identify concerns and opportunities to undo them. Twin Valley Senior Meals Driver expanded, or map existing networks, GMT and Meals on Wheels and gaps. Conversation with the Vermont Food to Plate and how to implement the Vermont Food Security Mapping 2035. Review state resilience implementation strategy and find where it aligns with Plainfield. Community meal and farmers market fiscal sponsorship and connection with the granary. Identify informal and formal networks before systems were in place today. Tap elders or mutual aid structures in absence of those structures. Track who's not here and develop ways to connect. Plainfield Historical Society conversations. Communicate through existing networks. Volunteer fair. So, of that, we've heard some ideas already of what people think needs to happen as a first step. Did we lose Dawn? Hopefully she'll join back in if possible. So now's the time to be like, all right, about 5 action steps is what we're going for as like, okay, we're going to hold these things as the things to move forward first and connect to resources about. So what on here do people think needs to happen first? Can't do it all.
I think one of the 5 should definitely be gather funds to support people making it happen. And there's one other thing that's kind of about funding too. I don't see it right now. I'm looking for it.
Well, there was this like day together.
Oh, yeah,
Is
just yeah. I don't
brainstorm.
think that needs to be out of the top 5 because that will come as it happens.
Okay. So really this gather funds to support people making it happen.
I just have a question. Did we land on the answer of if this sort of existing assessment of resources, like, do we feel like that has been done today or that does not have, like, you mentioned sort of.
I said needs.
It does,
Needs
it does,
assessment is exists.
that has been done, okay,
The resource, the matching, like, yeah, we know what needs are.
okay, but the,
specifics of the resources to match with that is.
I feel like that's an important
The resource.
next step is an assessment of what we have, what
Yeah.
exists, because then we can move forward to how do we connect them.
This one here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of the assemble core set of people to organize, because I think we're assembled, but we're not. Yeah, there's some work there.
Are there any others that feel like rise to the top? These are big ones too, so they could be just the things that need focus right now, but Olivia and then Kim. Okay.
I would just add the blue circle, whether that's, I think that's a combination of the gather interest volunteers and communicate to them. So I think those can go together, right? The process of gathering them is also communicating with them to make sure people know that this is happening.
So you see those kind of as an effort to communicate and then pull in those other volunteers.
Okay, thanks. Along the same lines about building that outer circle and gathering interest in volunteers, I think a piece of that also is to remember, how do we communicate to the broadest part of the community that are already here, or that may feel sort of excluded by sort of intellectual languages or approach. You know, people, some of us already know a lot of these ideas, and there are people in our community that they want to tap into the things we're doing.
Yeah.
But maybe not through some of the same kind of cultural language that we use. I mean, how do we connect to those people?
Does that feel like it's a separate, it's almost like a communication assessment / making sure communication is in plain language or is accessible to the community?
And that's broad for all of this work. How do we reach all those people, you know, all our neighbors?
Thanks for saying that. It reminds me of the track Who's Not Here and Develop Ways to Connect. I was also going to say the community meal and farmers market, fiscal sponsorship and connection with granary. That feels like the last page, page 4.
Thank you.
As a potential. Next.
Thanks, Steven.
Thank you. I see we've circled gather funds to support people, and I think we could broaden that and say gather resources we need to support people. And among those resources would be funds, it would be proper training and other, I don't know, materials, tools, and resources. So we could make that a little more general and cover maybe a bigger tent.
Do people feel comfortable with adding kind of gather resources, funds, whatever tools, trainings? We want to keep them so that they're possible to do too. So gather resources and funds.
I think would be important of funds. Oh.
I just would like to say, I think funds, the specificity is important. I don't disagree that resources include funds, but I would just hate for it to be lost in the fact that resources is so vast.
And Stephen, when you're thinking resources, is it like some of the materials that exist and documenting and getting all those pieces. So it kind of is that other action item of identify resources. Identify what resources to assess, was that the one? And it's the gather it into one place to be able to share it out. That's what you're thinking with resources.
Boatload of volunteers, you may, in the case of the flood, they needed tools to help shovel up people's basements. Just
Okay.
having volunteers isn't gonna help.
Right.
And having training they need if we're gonna do more higher skill level activities that they're volunteering in.
Yep.
No.
So I think those are all action
But
ideas.
What I'm saying is, you know, not just the funds they need, but the resources.
Okay. And well, training. So I think this one, we're gonna keep it as gathering the funds to support the people to make it happen. Do you think there's another item of gathering resources, gathering training is a priority to do off the cuff now? That's kind of connected to that. And there was one on the gather the resource page for relevant docs. Is that? Yeah.
Go to get information on stuff like this and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And we talked about whether it should be on the Plainfield Forward website or the town website.
Right, structuring
You
it.
could have it on one website, but you could have a link to it on several websites.
Okay. Oh, there's the mic.
Yeah, and I think that the online, it is connected to the communication. That seems to be a part, like those feel very connected to me. Yeah, thank you for keeping the gather the funds. That's definitely, we're talking about the yellow and the green circles. Because we need the funds to operationalize this so that we could actually do the resource gatherings and all of the other things. And I think with it, I don't think it's another item, but the organized skills, because I think this is part of what Stephen's talking about, the organized skill sets and roles. Like as we assemble the core group of people, as we gather the funds to support making it happen and we assemble the core group of people, part of the assembly of that is that we are bringing in people with the skill sets and the roles and the capacity needed to do this in the inner circle, like in the core team kind of piece. This is like a kind of a job role. And as those skill sets are actualized, then it allows for the work to then identify like what are the other skill sets and types of trainings and things that are needed, whether to operationalize the inner circles or also to operationalize like volunteers being trained to be able to do the different types of things that are being brought up here. So I would just have the organized skill sets and roles like kind of connected, I think, with the assemble core set of people to organize.
Assemble core set of people, the gathering.
Right above it, or
Sorry.
organized
Oh,
skill
this
sets
one.
and roles, like those two things are connected with assemble core set of people. There's a connection there. There's also organizing skill sets and roles in the outer circle, but it needs to be that connection with
Right, that's the outer circle one.
yeah, with the assembling the core set of people and their skill sets and roles, like those go together.
Yeah, so okay, so you're saying kind of pull these things together. What we're trying to do now is like, which ones are really happening first? Because there is going to be an assessment of sort of timeline for all these pieces and they're going to build upon each other. So really in the next couple of minutes, we need to be like, okay, these are the three things we want to move forward first and the other ones will happen. Nothing's going away, right? So this is like the long-term everything. Yes, Sam.
That's what I think I hear Ray saying, when I think maybe if I could just put it really bluntly and tell me if I'm getting this totally wrong, but we need to fund the Resilience Hub. And then there's funding and resources for projects and for the things the Resilience Hub is going to do. So I think there's a distinction here, and maybe I had read the gather funds to support people making it happen as like the seed funding for the Resilience Hub. So I think maybe we need to be careful, like, or maybe just like much more explicit with our wording and the action item, because I think, and Stephen, please tell me if I'm wrong, but I think you're talking more about the work of the Resilience Hub, which is gathering resources, which could be funding, which could be tools for when it's operating, and maybe there has a set of initiatives or projects, like we're gonna go fix those 2 steps to the church and we need tools and we need some plywood and we need some whatever. Like that's the work of the Resilience Hub. And I think that's maybe where we're losing some of that specificity and then in our timeline here. So I think, yeah, if I could suggest that the seed funding for the Resilience Hub could be one, and then maybe a later step is that assembling the resources for, maybe it's an initiatives and project list. Maybe that's something that could hook a lot of these together. I don't know.
Does that feel like kind of the ideas that you're pulling forward?
I think she's saying something I would word differently, yes.
Okay. All right, are there other things that we haven't circled that people think should be in the top? And of the ones of the circled, which ones? I heard a strong piece for these two as being kind of the next thing. Are there others that people think are more critical to start off with?
Yes, and it's kind of starting to happen. So the community meal farmers market fiscal sponsorship connect, like that is another piece. It's like the fiscal sponsorship of a initiative, right? An initiative of the Resilience Hub, as well as the figuring out and the funding of the actual operation. And so the community meal farmers market, especially because the community meal just went to weekly and isn't funded right now, that's, it's happening and it's immediate, so.
So that is something that needs attention right now because it's happening. Okay, so what I'm seeing is existing assessment of what exists, this volunteer training piece of it, organize skill sets and assemble core set of people, gather funds for this like seed to make it all happen and support the people making it happen. Then there's this gather interested volunteers, communication to the outer ring. A little bit similarly to that is that communication that's accessible to all. And then the community meal and farmers market fiscal sponsorship and connection that's needed right now. That's a lot. So are there things on there that still like come first before some of the other pieces? Yeah, Olivia.
Suggestion
Please.
that the second point on page 1, collaborate beyond Plainfield resource volunteer training, has the arrow thing. I hear that, and I think that it kind of actually fits into the funding ongoing work of Resilience Hub and initiatives, because that would be a natural step of it. And so I'm wondering, I guess I want to propose that we take the blue circle off that, because that doesn't feel like the next step. It feels like a natural step that shouldn't be lost, and it won't be lost, but that it maybe won't come number 1 or even number 2 or even number 3, but it's going to be like in the whole packet as we address this other point that was just added. How does that feel?
I second.
Can anyone not live with sort of moving this off of the priority list and into, it's still on the list and part of the process?
Would you say what line you asked me to? I just figured.
This one, the volunteer training.
Point 2 where the hand is on page 1.
With that, there's still a lot happening. Gathering the resources, putting them somewhere, communicating in a way that's accessible to all, communicating out to all those folks, and organizing, self-organizing, and doing an existing assessment of what exists. Of that kind of matrix, feels like there's probably a couple things to happen first. Yeah, Lena.
I don't want to speak on behalf of the people who actually live here, but I'm hearing that the people who live here actually are already doing this work, and I appreciate the intention to break down essentially the biggest project you could possibly do, right? Which is pull together all of the challenges and all of the beautiful things that are happening here into a coordinated network of people and buildings, into something that's actually serving everyone in Plainfield, into a bunch of concrete steps. But what I'm hearing from the folks who have been working at this project is that actually they have a really clear vision of the work plan, and that suggests to me that funding the already happening already like dozens of hours of work, months of work that have gone into this so that folks who have been doing it can keep doing it really is the priority. And it's not the priority to the exclusion of everything else. It's the priority that actually yields everything else.
A lot of agreement.
Yeah, so the gap, like the volunteers, the communication, all of those pieces
would happen after.
They would be happening after, like after the yellow needs to get the shit together and then work with the green. And then we think about the blue. And so we're not at the blue yet because we're still forming in the yellow. and priorities and exactly also what Lena said. So I would personally, I would just take those off from a priority, knowing that all of these things are going to have a sequencing that is going to flow out of operationalizing the Resilience Hub and the team that are coming together to do this with the team of the folks who are project managing, and then the actual network of the spaces, which would have representation from Twin Valley, right? Like would have representation from the different folks so that none of these get missed and that this kind of information is, you know, a part of what they're bringing.
Great. One more, Kendra.
Just agreeing with yellow, to use our colors, yellow circle, needing to get that funding and structure going. Having really zero knowledge of the options for funding. My question would just be to keep on the table, where does communication to people in the green and the blue potentially help get the funding for the yellow? So
yeah,
I agree kind of on general order. You know, like can't get to the blue until we've got the yellow. But just keeping in mind, again, really having zero experience with how to get the funding, making sure we keep open any paths to anyone who could help with that.
Okay, so I was hearing like this communication, kind of accessible communication. It feels like it reaches people, organizing the people, getting the funds to organize those people, develop the communication piece. And then we've got just kind of this existing assessment, gathering the resources, and then some of the pieces that are already happening, right? So I think it feels like that's a bucket of work that's manageable to like continue to move forward and start to connect to resources. So the next piece of time, we've got about 10 minutes until we're going to gather in the other room with everyone and share out on this. If you haven't signed up on the sign-in sheet, please do so. Raise your hand and they can bring it around to you. But we're going to ask for the resource folks in the room to kind of reflect back, particularly like what you've just heard. Like, what are the priorities here? How does that start to happen for this group? So we can kind of popcorn around anyone that wants to provide thoughts there.
I had an initial thought that I was actually fits in well with what we were just talking about in terms of collapsing some of these together and making sure that we're linking them so that they sort of phase together. And I'll say that obviously the funding landscape is challenging right now, but I do think that those existing initiatives around the farmers market, the community meal, and the connection to the greenery, those are pretty fundable projects that might help you get the funding for the broader picture. And then the bring a plate, or I forget how you phrased it, Dawn, that was excellent. I think that should be, what's the program? What is it? Bring a plate?
I just thought of that during the meeting today. Like, I don't know, but sure. Yeah, it works for now. Yeah.
Okay, well, I really liked that.
Oh,
And
thank you.
I think that that is a third piece will help you communicate with others. It will help you figure out who's not at the table, and it will help you when you want to build your existing assessment of what exists. So in my head, you might be able to whittle it down to those three that would keep the other sort of 3 or 4 that we've sort of been talking about as natural next steps. And I mean, there's some funders in the room, so we can ask them as well. But to me, that's a pretty concise, cohesive, sort of comprehensive, and there are still some funds available programs that might address some of those and some other initiatives, like when we talked with the library, et cetera. So I do see that food is complicated. I think you already know that, you're already doing it. But there are also so many good partners, and it's something that we really need to come around. So I think in terms of like, what is your pitch to a funder? Those three, go really well together. I'm happy to provide resources at any time, from what I know, but got lots of other minds in the room as well.
And the piece too, I guess, to put into the room is that all the resource team members, and as well who are listening in July, will be asked some of those same questions of like, okay, so where do they get the funds for that community meal process? And so we'll be developing all of those in one place too. Okay. Pam.
And I want to throw the principle out of under promise, over deliver in terms of funding pitches right now, because if your promise is small to your funder and you can deliver on it, and not just deliver on it, but then prove additional tangential benefits, like we funded community meal for 6 more months. Yay! So not only is it a concrete win, that then brings more and more people into the fold and creates energy and vitality around we can be effective together. But not only did we keep it going for 6 months, but within those 6 months, here's the new relationships that we were able to then mobilize, and now our circle's bigger. And so figuring out what is the thing that you feel like we can do this part, that is so achievable. Like find the small wins, and that becomes the pitch.
And multitasking.
Just a note from the other room, they said they need until 7:20.
Okay, perfect. So we've got 10 more minutes for ourselves. Yep. Ron.
No joke about the funding landscape being in a rough place. I think what this has me thinking, someone asked earlier, like, oh, is there funding for resilience hubs? It's a tough question because, like, again, what is a resilience hub? The state doesn't even necessarily have like its own definition of what that means. So I guess what I would say is there are funding resources out there. Maybe one of the things that the core group can do is part of that communications is there are existing structures that the state is very comfortable with. We have our municipal plans, we have our local hazard mitigation plans, we have our emergency plans. And I would be the first to tell you that that is not the extent of what this group wants to do or what needs to be done in terms of community resilience in blue sky days that makes you even more prepared for those gray sky days. However, communicating with those folks, because, they have this narrow sliver of what the state has been focused on, and they might have some thoughts and resources as well to say, this is something we've talked about in our local hazard mitigation plan, but we've never been able to get it off the ground, and we're aware of a funding source, and maybe it connects to something that you're interested in doing. So in your in your vision and in your action plan, like remain flexible. Think about in the communication, who are we communicating to and about what? And are we able to kind of swiftly pivot to say, oh, you know what? Agricultural and food markets has this really cool grant that's really focused on food stuff. So let's really focus on that part of what we're trying to do. The MERP program. I don't know if Plainfield has. There you go. Okay.
$304,000 folks today on several of the buildings that will be the focus. So.
Right. So like leveraging the energy that's and the funds that are already going into that to figure out how you can build off of some of the things that are going here. So I would suggest familiarizing yourself really well with what those other entities are doing and being really clear about what you're trying to do and how it may relate to what other folks are doing, because that's just going to help build your capacity and ability to be the thing that is going to serve other folks as well. So not very helpful. But the other thing I will mention, one of the programs that my agency does run is the municipal planning grant. In the past couple of years, we've been interested in those planning grants. So the planning grants are the things that would help you update your municipal plan a lot of communities have come in to say, we want to do a housing strategy. We need a little consultant support to do that. One of the sort of priority state outcomes that is a criteria for us scoring these grants. They're competitive, but one of the criteria is resilience. So, again, if you're connecting to your municipal plan, if you're connecting to your local hazard mitigation plan and saying, here's this next step we want to take, that makes for a more competitive municipal planning grant. The deadline for that, the planning grants happen every year. The deadline for that is coming up November. Thank you, Sam. That's embarrassing. Communities, you can do a standalone proposal, so just Plainfield, or if there was an interest in, working with other communities who are also thinking about resilience hubs and doing a joint multi-town proposal, that's allowed as well. And the last thing I was, check in with other folks in your community to know if there's other municipal planning grants being planned for your community so that you can, you don't want to be competing against each other, but I would talk with those other folks who might be interested in doing some of that planning work and see if maybe an MPG is something you'd want to put a proposal together for.
Stephen, is it a clarifying question or a context piece? Because we do want to hear from everyone. We're going to get back together.
Yeah, we're hearing from the resource folks.
I don't understand the question.
Is it a clarifying question of something that was just said into the room? Because we're hearing from folks as sort of like next steps or possible resources, and then we're going to gather together.
I'll start. If it's not appropriate, you can tell me. So I don't know. I'm just looking at the list you presented here, the 6 items on it. Gather funds, organize, communicate, gather resources, fiscal assessment. To me, these sound like activities that happen in a group of people in a meeting, or it's work that somebody does on the phone or on a computer to make stuff happen. And I'm seeing, so maybe I'm not, maybe this is a step beyond what we're trying to do tonight, but I'm seeing that all of this work eventually is going to result in something being built or something being moved or some action is going to happen. And this is why, move a little bit, this is why I feel it's really important that we have identified things for people to do other than this sort of activity. Someone shows up and wants to swing hammers, they want to shovel something, whatever. What do? Do you tell them, oh, thank you, but we don't have a need for you? Do we have them warm benches? I don't see a thing for them to do on that list.
Yeah, and I would agree with that in the pieces happening first. You need to create that structure for people to join the bench and sort of come on board. But it's not being lost. It's still a part of it. Swinging the hammers, making things happen is still in those action plannings. This is really okay, how do we get there? These are a few of the pieces getting there. So I want to hear from the rest of the resource team. And then before we join back in, we also want to set a date and a time for the next meeting. There may already be a standing gathering time with the resilience group. So if that is possible, it's like build on that. Like, is that a time that's been working for the people involved? Is it something else that needs to be thought of as like in a month from now, approximately? Seeing where things are, who's taking lead, what are the options for funding sources? Is there a standing meeting right now happening with the resilience
My
group?
understanding was that this was the last step in the BCRD process.
Yeah.
And so we were not going to be scheduling something now, because we want to be doing that based on who are weaving in with the circles, capacity, timing. We've struggled to find times that work for everybody. So that's not something that we would be planning to do today. That's something that we would be convening and figuring out beyond this point, and wanting to make sure that we have John, and I think Kendra, we don't have yours, and yeah.
Okay, so it feels like there's a structure in place to determine when that next piece is happening.
Wondering if we've started the process. We have started, right?
Yeah.
We've already started.
Yeah, we sort of started it, and then we were kind of like, we're gonna have this meeting and then figure out like, where we go from that, because we've just been planning kind of meeting to meeting, and we know that we will need to have a set time, but we're not quite there yet. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
But that is on
So
definite next steps.
So definite
Definite next
determine
step.
next meeting.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
There are a few people we haven't heard from yet. Chelsea and
So I just wanted to say that I think that one of the most important things, and it's obviously on the list of priorities, is to really identify your people. Who are your organizers? Who can you lean on? Who has what skills? Who can help with what? As somebody who has helped a lot of different organizations, it's something that like I think we all know that it's really easy to get burnt out doing this type of work. And making sure that you have those people that you can lean on to be a resource just for your own sanity and really like revitalize your own self and fill your own cup. So I think that's so important, like I said, to really find your people, find your core organizers, and it will surprise you how many other connections come from just people who care and are in your community and are on the same page as you. And just the fact that like, you know, we meet monthly and that's it all kinds of like I am constantly surprised learning new things about the people that I organize with and work with all the time. And I can't stress enough the importance of that. Sure.
thanks. Did we hear from everyone? Lane, Michelle, yeah, if you want to add something.
Yeah, I would just welcome, we have a meeting this coming Monday. Yeah, at 6 o'clock at the Jackwith upstairs, and I don't know if Ray or somebody wants to come and hang out with us. It's a lot less formal. And a lot of fun. And I have to tell you that when we're in those meetings and in that setting, that it's one of my absolute favorite spaces that I get to do work and organize in. It's really hopeful and inspirational, and it's like we're all struggling with big problems in the world, and these are the things that we're actually able to do that to make a tangible difference in moving in the right direction. And for a lot of us, it's like that space, it's like a happy place where you get to do like real shit in real time. So don't get discouraged by a bunch of paperwork.
And computer. What day is that?
Monday.
I think you already know this, but Crows can definitely offer fiscal sponsorship if that is a route that y'all want to take. And Jess, who's from Vermont Community Foundation, who's going to be in this room, but then ended up in the housing room. And I chatted a moment before this, and I'll make a connection. And I was taking some notes thinking about how y'all are talking about the importance of funding. And I am here to advocate for you all and support in the pursuit of getting funding for this work.
All right. Thank you all for being here and being in the space together and building the momentum that you already have graciously and amazingly moved forward in your communities. Thank you to Orca. Thanks, Don, for being online with us. We are going to jump over into housing and just hear back from them. What are their next steps? And we'll share out, and that'll be the end of the evening.
Can I add one thing for the next step? Sorry, Laura.
So if there's anyone in this room who has not filled out the skill sets and interest form and you want to be a part of this work, that is the actual next step. I have the link right here. I will send it to you. And that is how you that's how we're organizing. So I think there's a few of you who aren't on that. If you want to be on that, I'll send you the form.
Okay. Thanks, Ray.